Good afternoon to you, and as always, a very warm welcome to our Wednesday relaunch. Always a pleasure to have you here with us, and a lovely bright day as well for that. So a warm welcome to you, and I hope that you are enjoying your lunch and will enjoy the chance now just to take a few moments with me to think through just life and how we live life and how somehow life begins to make some sense to us. That's why in the middle of the day we try and have this opportunity just to pause long enough to reflect a little bit on something that the Bible has to say. Some of you may be aware of what was a remarkable event that took place on Saturday, this past Saturday. I'm not talking about a dinner party for correspondents in America or anything like that. I'm talking about something that was a remarkable event. And I noticed that one guy actually asked the question, could this be one of the greatest moments, one of the greatest sporting moments in history? It was that big, that important. And if you are looking at the screen there and thinking Rochdale and York City, how on earth could that be such a remarkable sporting event in history? Then that's understandable that you would think that, because Rochdale and York are in the fifth tier of English football. And if you know anything about football, English football is far less good than Scottish football. And so if you're kind of 5 levels down in England, you're kind of the pits when it comes to football. And that's where Rochdale and York City play. And they were playing on Saturday. And it was quite an important match for them, because whoever won the championship there immediately is promoted into the next level up. So you're actually in the English Football League. Rochdale, who were the home team, needed to win the match in order to be the champions. York City only needed to draw the match, and they would be the champions. That was the way it worked out. Both of them had just kind of been streets ahead of everyone else. If you know anything about football, and I'm not bothered if you don't know anything about football, because that's neither here nor there, but if you know anything about football, you play for 90 minutes. And if there's any injuries, then they add on a few minutes for any injuries that there may have been. And so at 90 minutes, the score is 0-0. No one has scored any goals. It's a pretty boring, pretty flat match after 90 minutes, but there's a little bit of injury time. And in the 5th minute of injury time, Rochdale score a goal. Now, that's quite a long time into injury time. 5 minutes, the clock is ticking down. They're almost at the end of the game. Rochdale score the goal. They go 1 up, and they are now in the position. They are winning the match. They've got the 3 points. They will be champions. And understandably, they kind of felt, we have delivered at the last. We've delivered the killer blow. We are the champions, like that. And crowds of people came running onto the pitch, celebrating the fact that now Rochdale had beaten York City. And of course, it wasn't quite the end of the match, because there were a couple more minutes of injury time to play. And if you notice the scoreboard up there, you see that plus 13. That is very, very unusual to have 13 minutes. But it took them about 6 minutes to clear the pitch. So you've got 5 minutes of injury time that they've already played. The guy scores a goal. You've now got 6 minutes to clear the pitch. And so you're up to 11 minutes like that. And in the kind of final move of the whole match, York City moved forward and they scored a goal. And it was a guy called Josh Stones, the number 9 for York City, who put the ball in the net right at the very end of the match. That was the end of the match. And York City had equalized, and they therefore had one promotion, because they ended up more points than Rochdale. And described by some, as I say, one of the great sporting moments in history. I think the guy who said that actually came from York, and so you can understand why he was saying it. But that is how he put it, the most remarkable match in history. And there is a far more remarkable event, obviously, that took place a long time back, and it involved, as it were, 2 sides. The R was not for Rochdale, it was for religion, the religious leaders in the land of Judah at the time. And the Y for York City was not for York, but it was for Jesus, as they say in the Greek, or Jesus as we know it. And the religious leaders figured that they had delivered, finally, the killer blow that had got rid of the one that they didn't like having around, that was getting in the way of their whole system. And they got rid of him. They crucified him on a cross. And it is the most remarkable event in history, the greatest and most significant moment in all history. And interestingly, it figured and featured another guy. Remember the guy who scored the goal for York City, called Josh Stones? This event, all those centuries back, featured another guy who was called Josh. We know him as Jesus, but Jesus is simply the anglicized version of the Hebrew Joshua, known for short as Josh, and his nickname was the Stone. The stone that the builders have rejected has become the cornerstone. And so you have this guy, Jesus, Josh the Stone, who they think they have got rid of him. They think that they have nailed him. They think that they have delivered the killer blow and crucified him like that. And he ends up on the cross. And they think that's the end of the story. But hey, if you know anything about Rochdale against York City, you know until the final whistle blows, it's not the end of the story, because you have a +3. Not +13, but you've got +3 days now, Friday, Saturday, and the third day, the Sunday. And on the third day, something quite remarkable happened. Boom. We have the most remarkable event in history there. Jesus, Josh, the stone was rolled away. Jesus rose from the dead. And that is the single most significant, momentous event in all history. And the repercussions of that are massive. The same way as York City on Saturday, they ended up being promoted. Josh, the stone, Jesus, was promoted and ends up in glory. Now risen, alive, at work in the world, someone that we have to take to do with. And one of the things that the books of the New Testament and the Bible are on about is just kind of spelling out what that means for us. What difference it makes to our lives, something that happened a long time ago. Does it actually impact our lives today? And the answer is yes, it does. It impacts our lives hugely. It has huge significance. It tells us, first of all, something about him, about Jesus, who he is, that he is who he claimed to be, that he is the very Son of God, that he is alive. He's at work in the world in which we live today, and we have him to take to do with. And today, we're just going to read a couple of verses from the Bible so that you can see what the Apostle Paul had to say about Jesus and his being raised from the dead. So here's what he says in Acts chapter 17 at verse 30. The times of ignorance God overlooked, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. So what Paul is simply saying there is that momentous event, where what looked to have been the killer blow that had been delivered by the religious leaders turned out to be actually something that was completely overturned when Jesus rose from the dead. The stone rolled away, Jesus rose from the dead. It has huge implications, and he points to two implications here that are really, really important for all of us. Number one, there is a day of reckoning. The day will come when the final whistle is blown on the history of this world, the history of your life. There is for us all a day of reckoning, a day when we have to give an account of how our lives have been lived and how we have actually, all of us, we just fall short of all that God calls us to be in our lives. All of us fail to measure up. There have been times when we've lied. There have been times when our attitude has been wrong. There have been times when we've been violent. There have been times when we've hurt other people. There have been times when we've done this, that, and the next thing, made all sorts of choices. None of us measure up. We maybe try to be good. We maybe try to be kind. We maybe try to be a good neighbor, but none of us measure up. And yet there is a day appointed where there will be an accounting, where we give an account to the living God for how we have lived out our lives in his world, and often for the mess that we have made of those lives and the mess we've made of his world as well in so doing. There is a day of reckoning coming. And you've got to reckon with that, says God, because even if you think that you kind of got rid of Jesus, even if you think somehow you can live your life without the living God, God has the final say. And the resurrection of Jesus is a reminder of that. You've got to read to the end of the story, because the end of the story is one where God has the final say. That's the first thing. There is a day of reckoning. The second thing that Paul points to is simply this, that Jesus is the judge. This Jesus who was raised from the dead, who was crucified and then was raised from the dead, he's the one who has been appointed. He's been promoted to that position where he will be the one who exercises that judgment. And the key question, therefore, for us all ultimately is, what have you done with Jesus? Have you ignored him? Have you scorned him? Have you turned your back on him? Have you said, listen, I can live without you, I don't need you? Or have you simply acknowledged him for who he is? Have you heard all his claims? Have you responded to those claims? Have you said, Jesus, I need your help. I need your forgiveness. I need your renewal. I give myself, therefore, to you and acknowledge that you are indeed the rightful king. What have you made of Jesus? Those are the two things that Paul is simply saying, that we learn from that momentous event in history. Far more significant than York City drawing 1-1 with Rochdale back on Saturday. Huge repercussions for us all. There is a day of reckoning, and Jesus, that Jesus, crucified, now risen and alive, he is the appointed judge. And you know that judges often are appointed to handle situations that have arisen that have ended up in a disaster or a mess or a lot of hurt and a lot of pain for a lot of people. They're appointed to do an inquiry, and they put a judge in the charge of that in order that he can sort it out. He can kind of correct things that have been wrong. He can sort things out and make things right. And Jesus has been promoted, elevated to that. He is the judge who will put all things right. I have a good friend who was in court about 10 days ago. In fact, I've got a lot of friends who end up in court for all sorts of reasons, and good friends who end up in court for all sorts of reasons. This particular friend was actually in a pretty serious court case. It was the High Court, and it was the High Court down in London. And on this particular occasion, he was there as an expert witness. And there was a lot hanging on this case, a lot of money involved in this case. And therefore, expert witnesses, they get challenged and they got bombarded. And so he was being kind of prepped in advance of that by the team that had asked him to be an expert witness so that he would know what to expect and how to handle it. They're not allowed to kind of go through the case with him, but they're able to explain to him how to conduct himself in the witness box. And he was getting all this instruction. And then he was told as the kind of final thing, this is the one thing above all that you must remember, that once you have been sworn in, you're there in the witness box, and you have the judge over there on your left, and you have the barristers there who are going to bombard you on the other hand on your right there. The moment you have been sworn in, and you've kind of taken the oath and said, yes, I promise that I will tell the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth, etc., that sort of thing. Once you've been sworn in, he was advised, make sure that you turn and you look to the judge, so that you are making it clear to him and making it clear to everyone else that it's with him that you are having your dealings. Doesn't matter what anyone else comes at you, and doesn't matter what anyone else says, but it's to him that you are directing your attention. And that seemed to me to be not only good advice for the guy down in the High Court in London there, but also a good lesson for us all in terms of how we live our lives. We learn to live our lives towards the one who is the judge, the one who is now risen from the dead, promoted on high, appointed to be the judge on that day of reckoning. Learn to live your life towards him, taking account of him, taking account of who he is, what he's done, why we need him, the forgiveness that is offered by him, the renewal that is offered by us, and the privilege that he gives to us of sharing in his service. We live our lives towards him. This friend advised, make sure you look towards the judge. And that's good advice for us all. And there's a sense in which that's all that the Bible is saying. Make sure that you live your life towards the judge, Jesus, because he is the one appointed. There is a day of reckoning. He's the judge. Make sure you live your life lived towards him. And you'll discover as you do so that he day by day provides you with the necessary strength, the necessary wisdom, the necessary help. And I trust that that will give you fuel for living out your life as you press on from here through the rest of the week, whatever it may hold for you. And may God bless you as you do so. Let me pray. Lord, thank you for your word. Thank you that you spell it out, that you don't pull any punches, but you make it clear that having raised your son from the dead, you mean us to understand that you mean business with us. And we're glad, the bottom line is we are glad that you are altogether righteous and that the God who runs this world is indeed altogether just and right. And yet we kind of tremble at that a little bit because we recognize we are anything but that. And our lives are marked by failure and by all sorts of ways in which we might have done things better and said things better, and our attitude often so wrong and our choices so often wrong. And it's kind of hard for us to kind of handle the notion that we give an account to you one day. But thank you that in your son Jesus, you've said that there is forgiveness. You wipe the slate clean because of what he's done. And we thank you for that and ask that you'd help us to learn day by day to live our lives towards the one who is the judge, and discover in so doing that he gives us the strength and the enabling that we need for all that each day brings. Grant us your blessing and your help. For his name's sake we ask it. Amen. Good. Enjoy the rest of your lunch then, and enjoy the chat, and lovely to have you with us here today.